Hey guys, first Regardsman here. I'll be talking about the recent controversy around the Ultra Grind ordeals and cape selection. And to talk about this with me, I have brought on Jefficus, who is finally back from vacation. Well, not vacation, but you are finally back after months away. Welcome back, Jeff. How are you?
I'm doing great, dude. I am excited to get into this stealth update that just released out of
That's a
nowhere
good way to put it.
during Warhammer Skulls.
It was before. They
Um,
dropped at like 11 a.m. It was nuts.
really?
Yeah, it
What
was
the
even before. It
hell?
was nuts. They didn't even put out an announcement. It just happened.
That's actually kind of amazing because, like, I don't really expect much out of a Saber and Focus, and so to see something like this is awesome.
It was very similar to like the Helldivers 2 one, except we didn't get an awards show. We just had it like randomly shadow dropped before the event show even happened, which kind of sucked for me because like I was playing the patch and I couldn't entirely watch the show at the same time, but I saw some of the new reveals from like Sixari and stuff like that. But a big controversy that happened from this patch being dropped was that the Ultra Grind ordeals, they really were an Ultra Grind because every single class had to do 100 absolute missions to get their full caves unlocked. Now, Focus has come out and said they do intend to change this in the future to be less grindy. This patch had no PTS, but I think this is a good topic to discuss because we've talked about a long-term grind for Space Marine 2 for ages and how this should affect the game, and how Space Marine 2 really does not have an endgame loop at the moment. So, you have any thoughts on this?
Well, cosmetics kind of are the end game grind of Space Marine 2 because once you've fully prestiged all your classes and you've unlocked the final like cosmetics from prestiging, then you kind of should have everything that you need to make your ideal Marine, especially when you consider the DLC and everything like that. But I think that for the most part, dude, like I'm kind of team grind because I would much rather play the game and earn something, even if it takes a long time and it's very challenging, than have to buy something. Like I'm I'm okay with having to do 100 absolute missions to unlock something, but this is also coming from Darktide, where you have to literally farm 1 million kills in order to get just a portrait frame for your character. So that's kind of where I'm coming at this from. I will concede that Space Marine 2 is a much more casual game, and it appeals to a much more casual audience. And as Saber continues to pump content, like there's already going to be more stuff in the game to grind. Like for example, we always return to accolades, right? Because accolades are
Yes.
it's kind of limited on how many you can earn per day and per week. And the more heroic weapons and the more cosmetics that they add into the game via the accolade system, the more grind there's going to be in the long term. And so there's already going to be this engaging long-term grind specifically for power and for cosmetics at the same time. Um, it might be more appropriate for a lot of these capes just to cost accolades, like just like make it cost like 1,000 accolades or something per cape.
That would probably be a better way to time gate it, but I think there should be a grind for players that want to put in 100 hours into something. Now, the 100 absolute difficulty missions for every class requirement was a bit excessive. You gotta think, absolute difficulty is literally too difficult for some players in this game. That is an unobtainable cosmetic for a lot of the player base in Space Marine 2, just like straight up. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And if this was like a one-off, like there weren't multiple capes for every single class, but capes are like a pretty fundamental part of what a lot of people want from customization in Space Marine 2. I think in this case, having them hidden behind like this super grind, I know what they were trying to do, but this was just a bit of a misstep. When it comes to future cosmetics from the War Gear Part 2 DLC, or not like DLC, but update, I think they will address this again. I think the War Gear system will have a long-term grind, like fundamentally, because it is kind of the point. But when it comes to difficulty gating people, I think that's where like the major issue comes up.
I don't know how I feel about that either. I think for me, it's not necessarily mostly about difficulty getting people. I think it's like that they're clearly favoring a specific game mode because it's not like you could farm these capes in like hard stratagems or something, or in PvP,
I'm pretty
or in
sure the
Siege.
hard strats count too. I know they count for like some of the
Really,
other deals, yeah. I
that
don't
might
know
be
if
the place
Siege
to
mode
grind. Then
works.
is basically wait for an easy hard strat and then just hit it over and over again. But regardless, like completely isolating or ignoring like just PvP in general. Like that should be something that counts for your cosmetics because there are, even though there are a few of them, only like 12 of them, there are people that play this game specifically for the PvP and they don't touch the PvE side of the game at all. They should be able to earn the cosmetics as well. And for PvE players, going into PvP may as well be as difficult as firing up absolute difficulty. So maybe attach it to PvP wins as well, just as a little bit of a concession. Having to do 100 per class, I'm kind of thinking about that. What is that like?
That's a long
30 to
ass
50,
time. That's a
30 to
long ass
50
time.
hours per class?
It's pretty
Like
intense.
that's a pretty intense grind for sure.
And you have to consider that absolute difficulty is very difficult for a lot of players at still 1K, so they're going to die along the way like a ton. That's 100 absolute missions. I mean, things just happen in these missions sometimes, just nuts. And like that's 30 minutes wasted. That stacks up over time. And I think players get very fed up with that over an extended period. Now, as far as what you said, where like you have these PvP players that don't play the PvE at all, and having them have an opportunity to earn these capes as well. I think that's a good point to bring up because I talk about Halo Reach all the time. I think Halo Reach had like the best cosmetic grind system ever because everything in that game fed into other portions of the cosmetic unlock system. So for example, you could play Firefight, you could get the same credits to buy stuff for your PvP character and stuff like that. But I think like what's really missing from Space Marine 2 currently for a long-term grind like this is really have like proper thresholds where in a game like Halo Reach, you'll play to warrant officer level and then you'll have like a new opportunity to buy like 1 of 10 cosmetics. So not every single warrant officer would look exactly the same and players like pick and choose what they want, but like there was that threshold where, like this guy's a warrant officer and then this guy's a captain, and then like some of the ridiculous cosmetics are like pretty limited but very hard to get. They were at the tippity top, and like those were like the haunted helmet, and those are for those super dedicated players. And I think it's good if a game like Space Marine 2 had that, but at the moment this game is funded by DLC cosmetics, and being funded by DLC cosmetics kind of just forces some of the cool cosmetics to be behind a paywall instead of being grindable in game, because we don't get like gameplay unlocks as DLC content, and because of that I think there will always be like some level of like the free cosmetics be a little undercooked compared to the ones you have to pay for.
Yeah, I mean I also really loved the grind in Halo Reach and how everything like tied together. I feel like the cape shouldn't be tied to specific classes. It should just be tied to the different game modes, because if you can prove that you can do 1 absolute mission, then you've effectively proved that you can do 100 absolute missions. Especially if it's like, you know, a true solo or something. And maybe that's what they do is true solo, an absolute mission, boom, you get a cape. Win 10 PvP matches in a row, boom, you get a cape. Or like complete a PvP match without dying, boom, there's a cape. Like these are all pretty hard things to do, and then obviously like get a certain amount of kills or whatever. So like there are different ways where you could earn something while making it challenging at the same time and making it a proper display of player skill rather than making it just kind of a mindless grind. One thing I will say though, dude, is that if the grind doesn't change, then this is kind of a good opportunity for a lot of those more higher skilled players to team up with lower skilled players and things like the Discord and everything, and create like kind of a solid community aspect where people are like actually looking to do runs, complete them efficiently, and just really grind it out. But that's not good for the game overall, because then it kind of like Darktide, like everyone starts to really pay attention to the meta, because all of a sudden clear speed matters. And so then you just get lobbies of people who are running TAC with Flamer and fucking Bulwark and Assault, and people are just, all they're doing is playing those 3 classes, whatever the S tier classes are, whatever the S tier loadouts are, and it's not good for the game in the long run, because everyone is just going to be playing to grind. People are going to be more toxic because they're looking for those wins. And honestly, that sentence alone has made me completely change my stance. I think that they need to untie the grind from absolute wins, because That's gonna make people really toxic, dude. I'm
They
telling you.
they did come out with a statement saying they're going to look at the ultra grind ordeals and like what the requirements are. So they're going to be making changes here. What I'm curious about is, will they change the absolute difficulty? I think that's like the big thing here. Like, will the time investment remain? Probably to some extent. I don't think they're going to cave on that entirely because they want these to take a while for players to unlock. They don't want this to be like a one and done, like you load it up on the weekend and you have all of your capes like easily done. It's supposed to take you a while because
Sure.
that's kind of what the game's been missing. But as far as gating it behind a difficulty, like you said, this happens in Darktide. And like, if we look at the Poxbreaker title in Darktide, that takes you like a million kills in that game. And that's something any player can technically do. It's just faster if you're better at the game or like you're playing a higher difficulty. So because of that, they could do
Right.
something like that in the game as well. And also, like you said before, the toxic challenges you have are like players in Darktide start to run like super meta builds or stuff like Auric Storm Survivor that forces very awkward playstyles for your teammates or rage quitting. I think they should really try to avoid that in this game. And when they address these cosmetic overhauls, they need to like look into removing the difficulty modifiers from these, in my opinion, because I just think having difficulty tied to your ordeal is a bad idea, but making sure there's still something for long-term players to grind for.
Yeah, I mean, they could have just used the like, you know how for the initial like armor unlocking system, you just have to complete PvE missions or complete PvP like games, like just win PvP games. They could have just created an extension of that if they really wanted to make this class based, and just made it so that you have to complete like 100 games period in order to unlock the capes. But I think that for a lot of people who've been playing for a long time, for a lot of us, the capes would have just auto unlocked because we play this game so much, and on pretty much every single one of the classes. I'm pretty sure, yeah, dude. Because like getting to like Prestige 4 on any
Yeah, people want
class,
like retroactive absolute difficulty missions to go back. Like I've completed, probably 1,000+ absolute missions on hundreds across each class. I should have
yeah,
all the caves technically. Like the fact that I, as like a 4,000-hour player in Space Marine 2, have to grind for a bunch of absolute operations. I mean, I'm stuck in the same boat as everybody else. Like I can't complete them that fast. If anything, it takes a longer in solo, which I prefer to play. And in that case, we're all stuck grinding for like dozens of hours. Now, for me, that doesn't matter too much because I play this game all the damn time. But I have to understand that like most
right.
players don't have the same level of time commitment they are able to even put into a game like I do in this case. 'Cause, like as a content creator, obviously I'm playing this game all the time, and a normal like gamer dad that's just like trying to hang out with his kid or like play on the weekends, he can't properly grind for that ordeal where he can in a game like Call of Duty, because we have other games that have long-term grinds. Just like you can more easily pick and choose what you want. In this case, the capes are like a very one note and across like each class individually. So it's like, okay, here's the threshold, here's what you have to do. And like most players like playing multiple classes in this game, and they really want to get all of these capes for all of those, and having like a multi-100-hour grind for just like this selection, that'll probably be like an even bigger selection in the future of even further grinding. I think it's a little excessive for a player base as casual as Space Marine 2's.
Well, one thing that I guess Focus and Saber should be kind of considering is that when it comes to the Space Marine 2 grind, like for someone who's like new to the game, one of their first priorities is going to be to grind accolades. And when you're grinding accolades, like let's say you're really trying to min-max it, and I know that they just moved some of those weekly accolades over to siege mode, so you basically have to be like kind of a all-encompassing kind of player in order to maximize or min-max your accolade grind. You have to do everything. And so if you're doing those normal dailies, if you're doing the hard dailies, the normal weekly, etc., then doing anything normal becomes a waste of time if you're also trying to go for the capes. This might be Saber's intention, but it seems like it's a bit too brutal because you're right, like the average person really only has a couple of hours, if that, every day to hop in and to get the grind done. And I think that for most people, if they've already prestiged and everything, they're gonna be focusing on those accolades. They're super important. The heroic weapons are super important.
That's true. They're going to be focusing on the accolades, and I think it should have been retroactive for a lot of players, especially the ones that have been playing the entire time. Because let's say if you're somebody that has like not a ton of spare time, and you've already spent like 100+ hours or 1,000 hours in this game over like the past nearly 2 years now, they should have these caves technically. And like asking them to put in another like 500 hours, that's kind of ridiculous. And this is where I kind of want to turn around to the audience on this, or like the Space Marine 2 community, in which how do you guys feel? Like, what would be a proper level of grind in this game for an unlock? And how many unlocks would you want to be like directly hidden behind a very long-term grind? And what do you want like endgame content to look like in terms of cosmetics? If you have anything else to put in, Jeff, you let me know.
No, I don't really think so. I think we've kind of said everything that needs to be said regarding this topic. I appreciate the implementation by Saber for a long-term grind. I know that it's something that like I specifically requested, and people in my community also specifically requested, because a lot of us come from Darktide, where we appreciate these things.
That's true.
But maybe go back to the drawing board on how players earn these, because Space Marine 3 is going to come out eventually. Like, we know that there's going to be a follow-up game, a sequel to this game, and all the time that we spend in this game is going to be left behind in the past. And I want to make sure, right, that the time that I spend is fun, not necessarily all grind. Like, Space Marine 2 actually has a pretty good amount of grind, whether that be cosmetics or for power, like with the heroic weapons that you earn through accolades. So it's already there. It's already all there. As Space Marine ages, or as Space Marine 2 ages rather, we're getting more and more grind anyways. So it's completely okay. They don't need to go too overboard.
Well, I think that's a great point you made there. And like you said, Darktide does appreciate cosmetics a little bit differently from Space Marine 2, and Space Marine 3 is guaranteed on the horizon. And maybe next year at Skulls we actually see something for that. But whatever cosmetic unlock systems we get in this game, we'll probably see pop up in some shape or form in Space Marine 3 as well. But thank you for hopping on with me and talking about this. And, I think this is a pretty good conversation to have, because cosmetic unlocks are like the big deal in Space Marine 2 in general. And if you like content like this, subscribe for more. And as always, thank you for watching. Take it easy. Bye.